Have you ever noticed that constant involuntary voice in your head?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, really pause to just listen to it.
Mm.
The one that, judges the person walking in front of you for walking just a fraction too slowly.
Right. Or the one that complains about the weather.
Exactly. Or rehearses those really complex, heated arguments you will absolutely never have with your boss.
We all have those.
Yeah. And if you are listening to this right now, there is a very good chance that a second voice is chiming in, interpreting my words, disagreeing, or, I don't know, maybe just wondering what you're going to have for lunch today.
Which is pretty ironic if you think about it.
It really is.
Uh,
So what if I told you that this voice, that endless chattering monologue you have identified with for your entire life, isn't actually you?
yeah, it is a staggering proposition when you first encounter it.
Right.
It just completely upends how most of us understand our own identity. I mean, we spend our lives completely fused with that internal voice. We just assume that the entity generating those thoughts, those anxieties, those judgments is who we are at our core. We think we are the voice.
We really do.
But when you begin to, peel back the layers of that assumption, you uncover a completely different reality about human consciousness.
And to really get into that reality, we are taking a deep dive today into a profoundly influential framework, which is Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
It's such a foundational piece of work.
It really is. We are going to look at the very mechanics of how your mind operates.
Yeah.
The mission for our deep dive today is twofold. First, to explore how the human mind has morphed from this highly effective survival tool into a runaway destructive addiction.
Which is a heavy concept, but so true.
Very heavy. And second, to unpack the practical, highly accessible techniques for hitting the off button on that constant mental noise, to end unnecessary suffering. But before we get into the heavy lifting of how to dismantle this compulsive thinking, there is a story right at the beginning of this material that I think perfectly sets the stage for what we are trying to achieve.
Oh, the parable of the beggar.
Yes, the parable of the beggar.
It is a brilliant starting point. I mean, it illustrates the tragedy of the human condition so simply and yet so profoundly.
So picture this. There is a beggar who has been sitting by the side of a road for over 30 years.
30 years in the exact same spot.
Day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
One day a stranger walks by. The beggar, doing what he has always done, automatically holds out his old, battered baseball cap and mumbles, spare some change.
Just totally on autopilot.
Right. The stranger stops, looks at him and says, I have nothing to give you.
Which is probably not what the beggar wanted to hear.
No, definitely not. But then the stranger asks a very peculiar question. He points downward and asks, what's that you're sitting on?
And the beggar is just...
The beggar brushes it off immediately. He says, nothing. Just an old box. I've been sitting on it for as long as I can remember.
Notice how dismissive the beggar is of the very foundation he is resting on.
Yeah.
It is just background noise to him. It's entirely unexamined.
Exactly. He hasn't thought about it in 3 decades. But the stranger insists, he asks, ever looked inside?
I love this part.
Right, because the beggar is annoyed now. He's just trying to get some coins. No, he says, what's the point? There's nothing in there.
He's so sure of his poverty.
But the stranger just stands there, holding his gaze and says, have a look inside. So reluctantly, just to appease this guy, the beggar manages to pry open the rusted lid of this box he has sat on for his entire adult life.
Then
What does he find? With astonishment, disbelief, and complete elation, he realizes the box is filled to the brim with gold.
it's just the wealth was there the entire time.
The whole 30 years.
Right. For 30 years, he was begging for scraps, feeling impoverished, feeling desperate, while quite literally sitting on a fortune.
And the premise here is crystal clear. The author is that stranger walking by.
Yes.
He has no spare change to give you. He has no external validation, no temporary fix, no new belief system to hand over.
Anything to add to you?
Exactly. His only purpose is to tell you to look inside your own docs.
Right.
Because the core argument we're exploring today is that those who haven't found their true wealth, which is this radiant joy of being in deep, unshakable peace, are beggars.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you have incredible material wealth, a perfect family, or massive career success.
None of that outer stuff matters if the inside is empty.
Right. If you're constantly looking outside for scraps of pleasure or validation or security, you are begging. You're completely ignoring the fact that you have a treasure within that is infinitely greater than anything the world can offer.
Which brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it?
How do we open the box?
Exactly. How do we open that box? Because the lid is heavy, and for most of us, it is rusted shut by, well, decades of relentless, unexamined thinking. To understand how to separate yourself from your mind and access that wealth, we have to look at how that separation actually happens.
And it rarely happens while you're just having a nice, relaxing day at the spa.
Right, unfortunately not.
If we look at the origin story behind this philosophy, it doesn't start with someone meditating peacefully on a mountaintop. It starts with immense, unbearable suffering.
A total breakdown.
Yeah, it starts at the breaking point.
That is a crucial dynamic to understand. Until his 30th year, the author lived in a state of almost continuous anxiety.
Which is hard to even imagine.
It really is. And it wasn't just a mild, modern discontent. It was regularly interspersed with periods of severe suicidal depression.
Wow.
It was an absolute visceral dread of existence.
I imagine waking up in the early hours of the morning
Yeah.
with this suffocating feeling of absolute dread.
Yeah.
He describes how even the physical objects in his room, like the furniture, the walls, they felt alien and hostile.
Like the world itself is rejecting you.
Yes. He looked at the world and felt a deep loathing for it. And the most loathsome thing at all was his own existence.
Right.
He was plagued by this terrifying logical loop. Like, why carry on with this continuous struggle? The longing for annihilation, for just pure non-existence, became stronger than the biological instinct to stay alive.
This is a state of total identification with the mind's darkest projections.
Yeah, the mind is just running the show completely.
Exactly. The pain is so acute because the mind is generating a reality that is fundamentally unbearable, and the person believes they actually are that mind.
But this brings us to the pivotal moment.
Right. One night, not long after his 29th birthday, a specific thought kept repeating in his mind over and over again.
What was it?
The thought was, I cannot live with myself any longer.
I cannot live with myself any longer. I mean, it is a thought a lot of people in deep despair have probably had in one form or another.
Sure, but he did something totally different with it.
Yeah, his consciousness suddenly shifted to analyze the actual structure of that very thought.
It was as if he stepped outside of it for a fraction of a second.
Right.
He realized what a peculiar, paradoxical statement it was. He asked himself, am I one or two?
Which is such a weird question to ask yourself in the middle of a panic attack.
It is. But he thought, if I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me. There's the I, and then there's the self that I cannot live with.
Think about the grammatical glitch happening in his head right there. I cannot live with myself, subject and object.
Right.
If they are the same thing, the sentence makes no sense. If they are different, then who is who?
He concluded, maybe only one of them is real.
Wow.
The profound realization here is the sudden, violent separation of identity. The intensely unhappy, deeply fearful entity that he thought was his identity, the self, the ego, that continuous stream of depressing thoughts, was suddenly exposed as an illusion.
It was just a fiction created by the mind.
Exactly. He was so stunned by this logical paradox that his mind completely stopped functioning.
It just broke the loop.
The thought stream just severed.
He says he was fully conscious, but there were no more thoughts, no more voice in the head.
Nothing.
He describes being drawn into what felt like a vortex of energy. It started slowly and then accelerated.
And he was terrified at first.
Right. He was gripped by intense fear. His body started shaking, and he heard the words, resist nothing, as if spoken inside his own chest.
Resist nothing.
Yeah. He felt himself being sucked into a void.
The description of the void is fascinating because he notes that it felt like it was inside himself rather than outside.
Like an implosion.
Yeah. It wasn't a physical black hole. It was the total collapse of his internal constructed identity. He let go of the fear, let himself fall into that void, and just lost consciousness.
And when he wakes up the next morning, the transformation is complete.
Totally different person.
He is awakened by the chirping of a bird outside the window. And he says he had never actually heard such a sound before.
Because the mind wasn't filtering it.
Right. His eyes were still closed, and the image of a precious diamond came to him. He says if a diamond could make a sound, it would be the sound of that bird.
That's beautiful.
It is. When he opened his eyes, the first light of dawn filtering through the curtains was just love itself. Everything was fresh, pristine, as if it had just come into existence.
And he spent the next 5 months in a state of uninterrupted deep peace and bliss.
Okay, I have to jump in and play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Because this sounds incredible. It sounds like a beautiful, spontaneous miracle, a total psychological reset.
It really does.
But, if you were sitting in traffic right now, gripping the steering wheel, stressed about a quarterly review at work, or dealing with a toddler who won't put their shoes on, how do you replicate a breakdown of the false self without having to hit absolute rock bottom?
Right, we don't want to encourage a breakdown.
Exactly. We can't all just wait around for a spontaneous, near-suicidal spiritual awakening to fix our daily stress.
And that is the exact reason this framework exists. You do not need to hit rock bottom.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. That spontaneous awakening was one path because the suffering was so acute it broke the mechanism. But the entire purpose of this deep dive is to provide a conscious, deliberate pathway to that exact same state.
Okay, so a manual override instead of a system crash.
Exactly. We do not wait for the false self to collapse under the crushing weight of despair. Instead, we actively dismantle it by understanding how the mind actually works. We have to examine our daily normalized addiction to thought.
Right, so let's get into the mechanics of this false self that we are all apparently walking around with.
Let's do it.
To understand it, we have to look at a very specific moment in history, a philosophical misstep that essentially doomed modern civilization to this state of chronic anxiety.
Yeah, we have to go back to the 17th century.
Right, to the philosopher René Descartes.
Yes, Descartes and his famous statement, which is widely considered the bedrock of modern Western philosophy.
Cogito ergo sum.
Exactly. I think, therefore I am.
He was trying to find the one undeniable truth. He figured, even if I am being deceived by a demon, even if my body is an illusion, the very fact that I am doubting, the fact that I am thinking, proves that I exist.
Which sounds logical on the surface.
It does.
But according to the framework we are exploring, Descartes made a fundamental, catastrophic error.
The biggest error possible.
He equated thinking with being. He equated human identity with the mechanism of thought.
Let's pause and define being here, because it can sound like mystical jargon.
Good point.
When we talk about being, we aren't talking about some deity in the sky. We are talking about pure awareness. The quiet baseline of consciousness that is alive and alert behind the noise.
The silent observer.
Exactly. If your mind is a movie theater, being is the blank screen.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Thanks. Descartes basically looked at the movie playing on the screen and said, I am the movie. He completely missed the screen.
Exactly. And because Western civilization built its entire worldview on this premise, almost everyone currently lives in a state of apparent separateness.
We're all just lost in our own movies.
By identifying completely with the thoughts in your head, you create a false, mind-made self. This creates an insane, highly complex world of continuous problems and conflict. You are trapped in a dreadful enslavement to incessant thinking.
The enslavement part is what hits hard. There is an analogy here that I think perfectly visualizes the absurdity of our situation.
Let's hear it.
Think of the mind as a superb instrument. It is a tool. It is like a hammer.
Okay.
If you need to build a house, a hammer is fantastic. You pick it up, you drive the nails, you build the walls.
Very useful.
But imagine if you finish building the house, and instead of putting the hammer back in the toolbox, the hammer suddenly decides it is the builder.
Oh, wow.
And it just starts frantically nailing things together. 247. It's smashing up the drywall. It's nailing the furniture to the ceiling. It's swinging wildly in the dark. The instrument is taking you over.
That is the perfect visualization of what we call compulsive thinking.
The hammer just won't stop swinging.
You believe that you are your mind. This is the ultimate delusion. The tool has taken over the master. You don't use it, it uses you.
Yeah.
And because you are unconsciously identified with it, you don't even know you are its slave. It is like being possessed without knowing it and taking the possessing entity to be yourself.
Think about that for a second. If you sit down on your couch and say, okay, I'm going to stop thinking for the next 10 minutes. I'm just going to enjoy the silence. Can you do it?
Most people can't last 10 seconds?
No. 10 seconds before the hammer starts swinging again. Did I leave the oven on? I should really answer that email. Why did Sarah look at me weird yesterday?
Right.
You aren't choosing to think those thoughts. They are happening to you.
Which is why this compulsive thinking is classified literally as a disease and specifically as an addiction.
An addiction to our own thoughts.
Now, what characterizes an addiction? Two primary things.
Okay.
First, you no longer feel that you have the choice to stop. It seems stronger than you. And second, it gives you a false sense of pleasure that invariably turns into pain.
Hold on. I can hear the immediate objection to this.
Bet.
Calling thinking an addiction. I need my mind. We went to the moon using human intellect.
We
We
did.
cured polio, we built the internet, we write symphonies. How can the very thing that makes us an advanced species be classified as an addiction?
It's a fair objection, but we have to make a very sharp distinction between practical thought and compulsive thought.
Okay, so the hammer building the house versus the hammer smashing the drywall.
Exactly. You absolutely use your mind to build a rocket or solve a crossword puzzle. But notice the motivation. Just as a dog loves to chew on a bone, the mind loves to get its teeth into problems.
Yells is a problem.
It thrives on complexity and resolution. That is why it builds rockets and does crosswords. But your true essence, that quiet awareness, have no actual interest in the crossword puzzle.
Right.
The mind is just doing what it was designed to do, solve problems.
Right. From an evolutionary psychology standpoint, this makes total sense. Our brains evolved to keep us alive on the savannah.
Yes, the threat detection machine.
The humans who survived were the ones whose minds were constantly scanning for threats.
Is that rustling bush a tiger? Did I store enough berries for the winter?
The optimistic humans got eaten.
Exactly. The mind is a threat detection and problem-solving machine. But the problem is, we aren't living on the savannah anymore.
No, we are not.
We are sitting in climate-controlled offices, perfectly safe from predators, but the software is still running. The hammer is still swinging. Because there are no tigers, it invents problems.
It creates tigers.
It turns a delayed text message into a life-or-death social crisis.
Precisely. And this is why what we call thinking is usually not the focused, problem-solving intelligence required for practical tasks.
No, it's just rumination.
It is estimated that 80 to 90% of most people's thinking is aimless, repetitive, and heavily negative.
80 to 90%.
Yeah. It is not just useless. It is actively harmful. This continuous internal monologue causes a serious leakage of vital energy.
A leakage of vital energy? You can physically feel that, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. Think about a time when you spent 2 hours obsessing over a rude comment someone made to you.
Just replaying it over and over.
You were sitting on the couch, not moving a muscle, just looping the memory over and over, thinking of all the clever comebacks you should have said.
And you get up feeling exhausted.
After 2 hours, you are physically drained. That is a leakage. The mind is burning your fuel to spin its own wheels.
And why do we allow it? Why are we addicted to this exhaustion?
Why are we?
Because we derive our sense of self from the content and activity of our mind. We believe we would cease to exist if we stopped thinking.
Wow.
We form a mental image of who we are based on our personal history, our cultural conditioning, our successes and our failures.
The ego.
Exactly. This phantom self, constructed entirely of thoughts, is the ego. And the ego can only be kept alive through constant thinking. If the thinking stops, the ego dissolves. So it fights for its life by keeping you obsessed with thoughts.
So if thinking is this energy-draining addiction that keeps a false identity alive, how do we break the habit?
We have to step outside of it.
Because clearly, we can't just think our way out of thinking. That is like trying to put out a fire with a flamethrower.
That is a great way to put it.
I'm going to figure out how to stop thinking by thinking really hard about it. It doesn't work.
It only feeds the mechanism. This leads us to the core practical technique designed to create a separation between you and the mind.
The first practical step.
Yes, you have to learn to step outside the thought stream.
Let's get into the exact how-to. There's an observation here that is incredibly funny, but deeply true.
Okay.
When someone goes to the doctor and says, "I hear a voice in my head," they get sent to a psychiatrist.
Right.
We cross the street when we see someone muttering to themselves on the subway. We label them as unstable. But the reality is that virtually everyone hears a voice or several voices in their head all the time.
Continuous monologues and dialogues.
The only difference between the normal person and the person muttering on the subway is that the normal person's swallowed the volume knob.
That is so true. The voice comments, speculates, judges, compares, complains, likes, dislikes. It is a relentless narrator.
Just a running commentary on everything.
And crucially, that narrator is rarely relevant to the situation you're actually in right now.
Oh, absolutely. You could be sitting on a beautiful beach on vacation, the sun is warm, the waves are crashing, it's paradise.
But where is your mind?
The voice is reviving a distant past conflict with a sibling. Or it's rehearsing a future scenario where your flight home gets canceled.
Exactly. It is interpreting the pristine present moment through the totally distorted negative lens of the past or the anxiety of the future.
The voice is acting as your own worst enemy, ruining the beach.
So how do we stop the narrator?
Wow.
We introduce a practice called watching the thinker. This is the first most vital step toward true liberation.
Watching the thinker.
You start listening to the voice in your head as often as you can. You pay particular attention to repetitive thought patterns.
Those old acoustic records that have been playing the same sad or angry song in your head for years.
Yes, exactly those.
But there is a very specific, absolute rule on how you listen.
Yes, there is.
You have to listen to it impartially. You do not judge it. You do not condemn what you hear.
This cannot be overstated. It is the most critical part of the practice.
Why is it so critical?
If you observe a negative, jealous, or angry thought, and then you immediately judge yourself for having it like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that. I'm so petty. I need to be more spiritual. What has just happened?
You're just thinking another thought.
Exactly. The thought hasn't stopped. The same voice has simply come back in through the back door wearing a different outfit. The judgment is just another thought.
It is the ego in a trench coat.
Ah, yes.
I was the angry guy a second ago. Now I'm the highly evolved guy who's disappointed in the angry guy. It is still just mind activity. You are still trapped in the hall of mirrors.
Exactly. So you must simply observe. You shine the light of awareness on it without taking a stand.
Just watch it.
And as you listen impartially, you will soon realize something profound. You will sense there is the voice, and here I am listening to it, watching it.
The two split again.
This realization, the sense of your own presence, is not a thought. It arises from a dimension entirely beyond the mind.
It is a radical shift in perspective. You are stepping back. You aren't the movie on the screen anymore. You are the audience member sitting in the theater watching the movie play.
Yes, exactly.
You suddenly realize the screen isn't reality. And when you do this, a new dimension of consciousness comes in. The thought loses its power over you.
It quickly subsides because you are no longer energizing it through your identification with it.
You have stopped feeding it your vital energy.
And when that thought subsides, when the narrator pauses because it is being watched, you experience what is called a gap of no mind.
A gap of no mind.
It is a discontinuity in the mental stream. At first, these gaps will be incredibly short, maybe just 2 or 3 seconds of silence. But gradually, as you practice watching the thinker, these gaps become longer.
Let's talk about what that gap actually feels like. Because if you have been addicted to thinking your entire life, the idea of no mind might sound terrifying.
It can sound like you're losing yourself.
Yeah. What is someone looking for when they try this?
When these gaps occur, you feel a certain stillness and a profound peace inside you. This is the beginning of your natural state of felt oneness with being, which is usually obscured by the noise of the mind.
That sounds wonderful.
With practice, the sense of stillness and peace deepens. It has no end. You begin to feel a subtle emanation of joy arising from deep within.
Now let's ground this in reality again. A lot of people hear words like stillness, peace, and no mind, and they immediately think of spacing out.
Like checking out of reality.
Yeah, they picture getting drowsy, staring blankly at a wall, or entering some weird, hypnotic, zombie-like trance.
It is a very common misconception, but it is entirely incorrect. This is not a trance-like state.
Not at all.
There is absolutely no loss of consciousness. Think about it. If the price of inner peace was a lowering of your consciousness, a lack of vitality, it wouldn't be worth having.
Right, you'd just be asleep.
Exactly. In this state of interconnectedness, you are actually much more alert, much more awake than in the mind-identified state. You are hyper-present.
So, practically speaking, how do we cultivate this if we don't want to just sit cross-legged on the floor and watch our thoughts? Are there everyday applications for finding the gap?
Yes, and they are incredibly accessible. You can create a gap in the mind stream simply by directing the focus of your attention entirely into the now.
Okay, how?
You take any routine activity that is normally just a means to an end, and you give it your absolute undivided attention.
Give us an example. What does that look like on a Tuesday morning?
Take washing your hands. Instead of washing your hands while thinking about the email you need to send, give the act your full attention.
Really focus on the physical act.
Feel the temperature of the water on your skin. Listen to the sound of the water splashing. Feel the movement of your hands rubbing together. Notice the scent of the soap.
You're just absorbing the sensory data?
Yes, you are pouring your consciousness into your physical senses, which pulls it out of the mind.
That makes sense.
Or when you get into your car. Instead of immediately turning on the radio and planning your route, close the door and pause for just 5 seconds.
Just 5 seconds.
Observe the flow of your breath. Feel the weight of your body in the seat.
It is sensory immersion. The mind cannot chatter if 100% of your attention is in the faculty present.
Exactly.
And there is a great metric for this. How do you know if you are doing it right?
What's the metric?
The one certain criterion by which you can measure your success in this practice is the degree of peace that you feel within. If you feel peaceful and alert, you are in the gap.
And it is vital to understand the broader implications of accessing this realm of no mind. It is not just about relaxation. True intelligence actually operates in this gap, not in the noisy mind.
Yes, this completely flips our cultural understanding of genius.
It really does.
We worship the intellect. We think the brain is the source of all great ideas. But if you look at history's greatest minds, that isn't true.
No, it's not.
Albert Einstein, for instance, and many other great scientists and artists report that their true creative breakthroughs came from a place of inner stillness, a time of mental quietude.
There was actually an inquiry made among America's most eminent mathematicians, including Einstein, regarding their working methods.
And what do they find?
The result found that thinking plays only a subordinate part in the brief, decisive phase of the creative act itself.
A subordinate part.
Right. The simple reason why the majority of scientists are not creative is not because they don't know how to think, but because they don't know how to stop thinking.
That is a staggering paradigm shift. The intellect is just a processing terminal. It organizes data, but the actual data, the real genius, the eureka moment, drops in from the silent space of the gap.
Yes. The mind then gives form to the creative impulse.
If you want a creative solution, you must oscillate between thought and stillness. Thought, without the consciousness of the gap, quickly becomes barren, repetitive, and ultimately destructive.
And if we expand our view here, we have been focusing heavily on the mind and the head.
Right.
But human experience isn't isolated to the skull. Thoughts do not just stay in the head. They cascade instantly and powerfully into the physical body.
Right, the mind and body are not separate, because the brain cannot tell the difference between a real physical threat and an imagined one.
It really can't.
If you have a stressful thought, say you imagine your boss firing you tomorrow, your mind might logically know it's just a hypothetical thought, but your body reacts as if you are literally under attack right now.
Your nervous system just fires up.
Your heart rate spikes, adrenaline dumps into your bloodstream, your muscles tense.
Which brings us to a very specific definition of emotion. Emotion is defined here as the body's direct reaction to your mind.
The body's reaction to the mind.
It is a physical reflection of your mental state. If you have an attack thought or a hostile thought, the body creates a buildup of physical energy we call anger.
Preparing for a fight.
The body is literally preparing to fight. If you have a thought of being threatened, whether physically or psychologically, the body contracts. That contraction is the physical side of fear.
It is fascinating to look at the linguistic root of the word emotion. It comes from the Latin immovere, which literally means to disturb.
Exactly. An emotion is essentially an amplified, energized thought pattern.
And it feels so much heavier than a thought.
It does. And because of its overpowering energetic charge, it is not easy initially to stay present enough to simply watch it. A thought is subtle, an emotion is loud.
It demands attention.
It wants to take you over entirely, and it usually succeeds unless there is a strong foundation of presence within you.
So what happens when there is a conflict? Let's say I'm in a meeting. Someone takes credit for my work and I smile and say, "Oh, no problem at all. I'm just happy the team succeeded."
A classic workplace scenario.
Right. My mind is saying I'm totally fine. But my jaw is clenched so hard, my teeth might crack.
Yeah.
And my stomach is in knots. Which one is telling the truth?
There is no ambiguity here. If there is an apparent conflict between them, the thought is the lie and the emotion is the truth.
The emotion is the truth.
Now, it is not the ultimate truth of who you fundamentally are, but it is the relative truth of your state of mind at that exact moment.
The body doesn't lie.
The body always, always gives a truthful reflection. You can fool yourself with your thoughts, but you cannot fake your nervous system's response.
Okay. Understanding that thoughts create physical emotional residue leads us to probably one of the most intense, profound, and frankly terrifying concepts we are going to cover.
The pain body.
The pain body.
It is a crucial concept for understanding human behavior. As long as you are identified with your mind, emotional pain is inevitable.
Unfortunately.
And here is the kicker. That pain doesn't just evaporate when the situation is over. Every emotional pain you experience leaves behind a residue.
It stays with you.
That residue lives on in you. It merges with the pain from your past, which was already there, and becomes lodged in your mind and body.
This accumulated pain forms a negative energy field that occupies your physical and mental space. This is what is termed the pain body.
It's almost like a separate entity.
It is described as a semi-autonomous energy form. Think of it almost like a parasite made of pure emotional pain. It is the dark shadow cast by the ego.
And like any entity, like any parasite, it wants to survive.
And how does it survive?
To survive, it has to get you to unconsciously identify with it. It feeds on any experience that resonates with its own kind of energy. Anything that creates further pain in whatever form. Anger, destructiveness, hatred, grief, emotional drama, violence, and even illness.
The mechanics of how the pain body feeds are chilling, but also incredibly validating if you have ever found yourself in a completely irrational argument and wondered afterward what just came over me.
We've all been there.
When the pain body gets hungry, it awakens from its dormant state. It tricks you into identifying with it, so you become the pain body. And then it actively looks for situations or people to provoke.
It needs to create a situation that reflects its own negative energy frequency back to it so it can feed.
It's fishing for a reaction.
When the pain body has taken you over, you literally want more pain. You either want to inflict pain on someone else or you want to suffer pain yourself. Or both.
But we would never admit that.
No. Your conscious mind will vehemently claim that you do not want pain. You will say, I just want peace.
Right.
But if you observe closely, you will find that your thinking and your behavior are perfectly designed to keep the pain going.
Let's look at a concrete example because this happens in households every single day.
Give us a scenario.
Imagine a couple having a lovely, peaceful dinner. Out of nowhere, one person makes a slightly sharp, critical comment about how the other loaded the dishwasher. It's minor.
So minor.
But the other person's pain body is hungry. It senses a trigger. Within 60 seconds, the dishwasher is forgotten, and they're screaming at each other about a vacation that happened 5 years ago, throwing out vicious personal attacks.
0 to 100.
Their pupils are dilated, their voices are altered. That is the pain body waking up, smelling a drop of blood, hijacking the human hosts, and creating a feast of negative energy.
It is a profound realization when you see it happening, either in yourself or in your partner. The pain body has completely overridden the rational mind.
It's terrifying.
And it is important to note that this isn't just an individual phenomenon. There is also a collective human pain body, which contains the accumulated pain of thousands of years of human history.
Disease, torture, war, murder, madness.
Yes. We are all born into that collective field.
And there is a specific mention of the collective female pain body.
That's right.
Women, on top of their personal pain body, often carry a heavy share in the collective female pain body. This consists of the immense pain suffered by women over millennia of subjugation, slavery, exploitation, childbirth, and violence.
Yes, and the text highlights how this pain body often awakens in alignment with physical cycles, specifically just before or during menstruation.
The physical hormonal shift acts as a trigger.
Exactly. It triggers the awakening of this accumulated collective pain. Suddenly, a heavy cloud of negative emotion, irritability, or deep sadness descends.
But importantly, this is framed not just as a biological burden, but as a profound spiritual opportunity.
How does immense emotional pain become an opportunity?
That's the key, because the pain body is forced out into the open. When the physical cycle approaches, a woman can use this predictability to become very alert. If she can inhabit her body fully, she can catch the pain body before it completely takes over her mind.
By watching it.
Yes, if she can put the intense spotlight of her attention on the physical sensation of the emotion, feeling the strong energy charge, without identifying with it, without letting it spin into a story about why her life is terrible, she can transmute that pain into radiant consciousness.
It is a powerful, demanding spiritual practice of intense presence.
That brings us to the ultimate question regarding the pain body, whether you are male or female, personal or collective. How do we defeat it?
Good question.
If this parasitic energy form is constantly trying to hijack our nervous system to feed on drama, how do we starve it out?
The answer is entirely counterintuitive to how we normally solve problems.
Okay.
You do not fight it. You cannot fight the pain body.
You can't.
Trying to aggressively suppress it or fight it just creates more inner conflict, which generates more pain, which feeds the pain body. It's a trap.
So what do? Just let it ruin your life?
No, you observe it. You watch it. Watching it implies accepting that it is there at that moment.
Bring it into the light.
The pain body is absolutely terrified of the light of your consciousness. Its survival depends on your unconscious identification with it. It needs you to think you are the anger.
But the moment you observe it,
The moment you feel its heavy energy field within your chest or your stomach, and you simply take your attention into it without judging it, the identification is broken.
a higher dimension of consciousness comes in.
You are now the witness, the watcher of the pain body.
It can't use you anymore by pretending to be you. It's like turning on the lights in a room where a burglar is hiding. The gig is up.
That's exactly it.
And I love the physical analogy used here. It is like a spinning wheel that you have stopped pedaling.
Yes, the momentum.
It will keep turning for a while due to momentum. You might still feel the physical aches, the adrenaline, the tight chest, but it is no longer being propelled by your unconscious thoughts. Unconsciousness creates it. Consciousness transmutes it into itself.
This profound mechanism of observation raises a fascinating question about the nature of our minds.
What's that?
If the present moment, the simple act of watching, is so peaceful, and if the pain body only manages to feed when we are dragged out of the present into unconsciousness, why is the mind so utterly obsessed with dragging us away from the now?
Right. Why does the mind resist the present moment so violently? Why is it so hard to just sit on a park bench and simply be?
The answer lies in the psychological construct of time.
Time.
To the ego, the mind-made false self, the present moment hardly exists. It is considered useless. Only the past and the future are considered important.
Which is completely backward.
This total reversal of the truth accounts for the fact that in the ego mode, the human mind is profoundly dysfunctional.
Let's unpack the evolutionary and psychological reasons for this. Why does the ego need the past?
Because without it, who are you?
Exactly. Your identity is entirely constructed from your history. Your name, your memories, the things you've achieved, the traumas you've suffered, your cultural conditioning.
It forms the boundary of you.
The ego says, I am the sum total of my past experiences. If you drop the past, the ego loses its shape. And why does it need the future?
Because the future holds the promise of salvation.
One day, when I get that promotion, when I find the perfect partner, when I make $1 million, then I'm going to be okay. Then I will find peace.
The mind reduces the present moment to nothing more than a stepping stone, a means to an end.
Just something to get through.
An end that always lies in the mind-projected future. But the reality of existence is that the future never actually arrives. When it arrives, it is the present. Have you ever experienced a future moment?
Never.
No, you only experience the present. So the ego is constantly chasing a mirage across the desert. It is a recipe for perpetual dissatisfaction.
Now, we need to draw a very sharp practical distinction here, because again, it is easy to misinterpret this.
Right, the practical side of time.
You might be thinking, but I have to use time. I can't just wander around in the present moment all day. I have to schedule meetings. I have to plan for my retirement. I have to learn from past mistakes so I don't touch the hot stove again.
And that is absolutely correct. This is why we must distinguish between clock time and psychological time.
Clock time versus psychological time.
Clock time is practical. It is using time for practical matters in the physical world. Scheduling an appointment, planning a trip, looking at a past mistake to extract a lesson.
Very useful.
But the crucial point is this. The moment the practical task is done, you return your consciousness to present moment awareness.
So what is psychological time? Because that is the real trap.
Psychological time is the incessant, compulsive mental dwelling on the past and future when it serves no practical purpose.
Just spinning the wheels.
It is emotional identification with the past and continuous projection into the future. Let's say you make a mistake at work. Looking at what went wrong and deciding how to fix it tomorrow is clock time. But spending the next 3 days agonizing over what a failure you are, imagining your boss firing you, replaying the mistake in your head while you were trying to eat dinner with your family, that is psychological time.
That sounds exhausting.
The egoic mind generates a constant undercurrent of unease, tension, boredom, and nervousness through this obsession with psychological time.
There is a brilliant anecdote from the psychologist Carl Jung that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, I know the one.
Jung was talking to a Native American chief, and he asked the chief what he thought about white people. The chief said, they have tense faces, staring eyes, and a cruel demeanor. They're always seeking something. What are they seeking? They always want something. They're always uneasy and restless. We don't know what they want. We think they are mad.
That is the most piercing, accurate description of a civilization trapped entirely in psychological time.
It really is.
That undercurrent of constant unease, the deeply held belief that salvation is in the next moment, the next acquisition, the next relationship. It is an exhausting way to live.
So getting out of psychological time means entering a state of absolute presence. But let's really pin down what presence feels like.
Okay.
Because again, the mind immediately tries to turn presence into a concept to understand, but the mind cannot understand it. It has to be experienced.
To explain the feeling of true presence, we can look at a powerful analogy from the teachings of Jesus. It is the esoteric meaning behind his parables about waiting.
Waiting.
Jesus often used the analogy of a servant waiting for the return of the
Yeah.
master.
But it is crucial to understand what kind of waiting this is. If I'm waiting for a bus, I am tapping my foot, looking at my phone, checking my watch, bored out of my mind, wishing the future would hurry up and get here.
Exactly.
That is not the waiting he meant.
No, that is a restless waiting. That is a denial of the present. The waiting Jesus described is a qualitatively different state. It is a state of total hyper-alertness.
Hyper-alertness.
Think of a cat watching a mouse hole. Something could happen at any fraction of a second, and if you are not absolutely awake, absolutely still, you will miss it.
The cat isn't checking its phone.
Exactly. In that state of waiting, all your attention is poured into the now. There is none left over for daydreaming, thinking, remembering, or anticipating.
There is no tension in it, no fear, just vibrant, alert presence. You are present with your whole being, with every single cell of your body.
And the ego vanishes.
In that state, the you that has a past and a future, the personality, the ego, the collection of problems, is hardly there anymore. But you haven't lost anything of value. You are still essentially yourself.
More yourself than ever.
In fact, you are more fully yourself than you ever were when you were lost in thought.
This is why we must reiterate that presence is not a trance. A trance is falling below thought into a state of dullness, sleep, or intoxication.
Like checking out.
Presence is rising above thought. It is the evolutionary next step for human consciousness. Falling back to a level of consciousness below mind, which is the pre-thinking level of our distant ancestors or animals, is not an option for us.
We can't devolve.
There is no way back. The only way out of the madness of the mind is to push through to the next stage, which is conscious presence.
Which brings us to the ultimate goal of all of this, the final concept we need to explore. Surrender, forgiveness, and true enlightenment.
The big ones.
Let's start with enlightenment. That word comes with so much heavy baggage. It conjures up the idea of some superhuman accomplishment. You picture a monk meditating in a Himalayan cave for 40 years, levitating off the ground, eating 1 grain of rice a day.
Right. And the ego loves to keep it that way, a goal that is so distant and impossible that you don't even have to try.
Exactly. But if we strip all of that mystical baggage away, we can look at the Buddha's incredibly simple definition of enlightenment, the end of suffering. That's it.
The end
There's nothing superhuman in that. It is simply your natural state of felt oneness with being. It is a state of connectedness with something immeasurable and indestructible that is already inside you.
The end of suffering. It sounds beautiful, but how do we actually end suffering in a world full of pain, injustice, and daily annoyances?
Good question.
The mechanism to get there is surrender.
Surrender. Now, when I hear the word surrender, my ego immediately flares up.
It hates that word.
I think of defeat, the white flag, giving up, becoming a passive doormat for the world to walk all over.
And that is the most common fundamental misunderstanding of the concept. Surrender is a purely inner phenomenon.
Inner phenomena.
It does not mean that on the outer level you cannot take action and change your situation. Surrender is the unconditional and unreserved acceptance of the present moment.
So accepting what is.
It is the conscious choice to relinquish inner resistance to what is.
Let's use an analogy here to make it incredibly concrete.
Let's do it.
Say I am driving my car down a dirt road and I get stuck in deep, thick mud. My wheels are spinning, mud is flying everywhere, and I am going absolutely nowhere.
A very frustrating situation.
Extremely. Does surrender mean I just sit in the driver's seat, sink into the mud, smile blissfully, and say, well, the universe wants me in the mud, I accept my fate?
Absolutely not. That is resignation. Resignation is not surrender.
Okay, good to know.
You do not need to accept an undesirable or unpleasant life situation as permanent, nor do you need to deceive yourself and say that there is nothing wrong with being stuck in the mud. You recognize fully that you want to get out of it.
Okay, so where does the actual surrender happen? If I still want to get out of the mud, how am I surrendering?
You surrender by narrowing your attention down to the exact physical reality of the present moment without mentally labeling it in any way.
So no story about it.
This means there is no judgment of the now. Therefore, there is no emotional resistance, no negativity. You accept the isness of this moment. The pure fact is, the car is in the mud. That is reality.
Just a statement of fact.
Getting furiously angry at the mud, cursing yourself for taking this road, punching the steering wheel, projecting a future where you miss your important meeting and ruin your career, that is resistance.
That's all mental drama.
That is the pain body feeding on the situation.
Surrender is cutting all that psychological drama out entirely.
Yes. You accept the reality of the present moment without the emotional tantrum, and then you take action. You do all that you can to get out of the mud.
Call a tow truck.
You call a tow truck, you put boards under the tires. This is called positive action. It is remarkably more effective than negative action, which arises out of anger, despair, or frustration.
Because you have a clear head.
Positive action is clear, focused, and free of emotional leakage.
So, non-surrender hardens your psychological form. It creates a strong sense of separateness. When you resist reality, the world around you, and people in particular, come to be perceived as threatening.
You literally get tight.
It literally causes tension in the physical body. Your shoulders go up, your breathing gets shallow. Surrender is releasing that tension. It is opening up. It's saying yes to what is before you decide what to do next.
And this total acceptance of what is leads naturally to the true, deep meaning of forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
When you surrender to the present moment, you see that there is no accumulation of resentment that needs to be forgiven later.
That is a profound point. Forgiveness is usually thought of as something you do about the past.
Right, like digging up old graves.
But if you forgive the present, if you allow the present moment to be exactly as it is without resisting it, then there will be no accumulation of resentment that needs to be forgiven at some later time.
You're just clear in the moment.
You process reality in real time.
If you are run by your mind, you will suffer the inevitable consequences of your unconsciousness, and you will create further suffering for yourself and others.
It's unavoidable.
But when you surrender to what is and become fully present, the past ceases to have any power over you. You do not need it anymore to define who you are.
Presence is the key.
The now is the key.
And now is the key. Well, we have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started by exploring how the mind, which is supposed to be a magnificent tool for navigating the physical world, has completely taken over the masters. We defined the disease of compulsive thinking and how it drains our vital energy just to keep a false, fragile ego alive.
We discussed the highly practical step of watching the thinker, listening to the voice in your head without judgment, and learning to inhabit those gaps of no mind where true peace, intelligence, and creativity reside.
And we mapped out how thoughts cascade into the body, uncovering the pain body and its parasitic need to feed on emotional drama and conflict.
We exposed the ego's obsession with psychological time, exploring how it constantly sacrifices the reality of the present for a mirage of the future or a ghost of the past.
And finally, we redefined enlightenment not as a superhuman feat, but as the simple end of suffering, achievable through inner surrender to the isness of the present moment.
The entire journey we've outlined today is about moving from mind dominance to being. It is moving from chronic resistance to absolute acceptance.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive. But before we go, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought inspired by this material.
Something to really sit with.
The next time you find yourself deeply frustrated, maybe you were waiting in an incredibly slow line at the grocery store, or you were dealing with a difficult, aggressive person at work, or you were just stuck in gridlock traffic. Catch the voice in your head.
Catch it in the act.
Catch the physical tension in your body. And ask yourself this.
Am I polluting the world right now with my internal resistance, or am I cleaning up the mess by being the observing presence?
You are not the voice in your head. You are the silent awareness listening to it. It's time to put the tool down when you aren't using it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Try taking just one totally conscious breath today. Feel the air, feel the stillness, and find that gap. We'll catch you next time.